Welcome to The How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of The How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and my guest today is Garrett Delph. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Henry. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to this conversation. On this episode, we're going to explore briefly Garrett's very interesting entrepreneurial journey, how he got to where he is today as an entrepreneur. And then there's so many different topics he can talk about based on his experiences, but we're going to focus in on what I'm calling how to navigate growth while maintaining, or rather while minimizing, the chaos in your small business. And I think that resonates with a lot of us. How do we grow? And at the same time, how do we manage the chaos that can ensue? People chaos, transactional chaos, all of that stuff that can happen in a business. To get more information about the How of Business resources, including the show notes page for this episode, and to learn more about my coaching programs, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to please consider supporting this podcast on Patreon and to subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. So let me tell you a little bit more about Garrett, and then we'll get into the conversation. Garrett Delph is a serial entrepreneur and the founder and chief clarity officer at Clarity Ops LLC. Clarity Ops LLC is a provider, or provides rather, process and performance consulting for medium to large businesses that are experiencing operational challenges. And they help them by streamlining their operations, improving efficiency, and supporting growth. Garrett has founded 3 successful international businesses that have collectively generated over $40 million in revenues. I can go on and on about Garrett, but you'll get to understand more about his successes here as we get into the conversation. Garrett lives in the San Diego, California area. So once again, Garrett Delph, welcome to the episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Henry. Excited to be here.
All right. So I'd like to start kind of at the beginning. I'm always curious when I look at, I do the research and I look at, what you studied in school, which if I got it right was speech communication, right? You got a bachelor's in speech communication. So the question I always like to ask, what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up back when you were in university?
Yeah, well, I went into college wanting to be an actor. And that didn't turn out so well. I got into my freshman year of college, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. If I ever wanted to make money, being an actor probably would not be the path.
Interesting.
But part of being on stage and loving playing roles and characters, I simultaneously fell in love with communicating, both writing and oratory, and so that led me to speech comm. And I didn't really know what that meant, actually. I just know I love to speak and kind of love to write, and went for it.
And so then after school, you kind of went into the winemaking industry. Was that just an opportunity that was presented to yourself? Did you seek that out purposefully? How did you end up there?
It's I appreciate the question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Out of college, I had a little bit of an entrepreneur bug. I went to school in LA, came back to San Diego, joined a startup. I was out on a sales call, turning left at an intersection and got sideswiped.
Oh my!
Totaled my car. Was dirt poor, no money. The next day, I reached out to a friend in LA and I said, "Do you know anybody in your network that will hire me, but will also give me a car?"
What were you doing for that startup? What was your role there?
Yeah, we were selling this new form of advertising to the local colleges, which were basically, it was door hangers. That's not a new form of advertising, but to the colleges it was.
I see.
So we were going to sell advertisements on the door hangers, and then the door hangers had benefits to the college students with like things they needed to know in their dorms.
That was because you lost your transportation, you essentially lost your job, if you will, or ability.
Pretty much. I couldn't, I had no money and to buy a car.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And the person that I knew said, "You know what? My uncle leads hiring at Gala Wine, and they give you a car if they hire you." I was like, Let's do it.
Wow.
So I had a friend drive me up to LA, took the interview. They hired me, and within a week, I was driving a brand new white truck for Gallo Wine, selling wine.
As a salesman, who were you calling on? Did wine distributors or retailers, or I'm
Yeah.
assuming, or
So
okay.
I had the San Fernando Valley was my region, and I had all of like the Vons and the Stater Brothers, kind of those department stores, grocery stores rather. Um, and you know, it was really fantastic. In hindsight, one of the best experiences I could have had. They're the largest winery in the world,
Yeah.
and they are serious about marketing and selling.
Yeah.
So I got just, top class 5-star sales and marketing training out of the gate, and had a really good run with them for a couple of years.
All right. So then that's what leads into you starting your first business. Is that correct?
Not quite.
Okay.
While I was with Gallo, I ended up getting drafted by a great company out of Boston called Nantucket Nectars. A couple of founders, Tom and Tom, started this really great juice company. So I went to work for them and worked for them for about 5 years.
Wow. 5
another,
years.
Another really great run, tour of duty, and learning about, scaling a national beverage brand, and all of the logistic and sort of, operational parts that go into selling to distributors and then distributing to the local markets. It was really, really fascinating and great. But after 5 years, I didn't, I fell out of love with it. And I actually, at that point, didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was what I didn't want to do. So I cashed in my 401, gave my notice, cashed in my 401k.
Wow.
This is
Were
back
you single at the time, married around this time?
very single.
Yeah.
Very single. And, I think at that point I was like 26, maybe 26 or 27. And, my 401k was $13,000, Henry, but I thought I was the richest guy in the world.
Oh, I hear you. I did
You know
the
what I
same
mean?
thing in my late 20s. So I understand.
And so, but what it did afford me is a chance just to kind of think and dream, which I, in hindsight, again, really coveted that. And so I had two loves. One was aquatic. I have a pretty extensive aquatic background. And I had a love and appreciation for photography, although I had never owned a camera.
Interesting.
So here's what I did. After a couple of months, I decided, all right, I'm going to start a swim school. I know it sounds crazy, but I started a swim school. I wrote my own proprietary curriculum and just started out of the gate, putting up signs everywhere, at least a local athletic pool, and started swim lessons. That grew into a really fun thing. But I also bought a camera, and in my off time, I was taking pictures of everyone, everywhere, all the time for free. I was like, you want pictures? You want pictures? You want pictures? And funny enough, after some time, people would say, hey, will you take my picture? And that's when I started charging. Long story short, although the swim school had some good growth and a good run, it was the photography that really took off. And so that led me into a decade of shooting what turned into professional wedding and portrait photography. And grew a fairly large studio with multiple photographers. And over the course of that time, I think we shot like 400 weddings. Wow. And that was, up till that stage, that's how things went along.
Mm-hmm. Why did you exit that business?
Yeah. So in 2005, there was a digital inflection point. So basically, overnight, film died. And quickly, this idea of digital cameras showed up on the market for the professionals, and we all needed to, transition. When that happened, there literally were no solutions for digital photographers to have a professional service process all of their digital media the way they would process film. And so suddenly we were both the photography studio and the lab. So it was double the work.
Mm.
And it was almost just wiped me out. It was too much. So what I did is I found somebody, hired them, paid Adobe to train them to do what's called post-production in basically what's now called Lightroom, a Lightroom application. And that saved me. I like literally after, 3 months of training and all that, that whole lab thing went away. I had a full-time employee and that's all they did. And then being in the industry, I could see this is going to be an epidemic. I could already see everybody, complaining and distraught and overworked. So I co-founded a company called Shoot.Edit, which ended up being the first digital media post-production lab to the world. At that time, the internet was really getting going, and you could send large data packets over the internet to anywhere in the world. And so we were internet driven. And after 2 years of that, which was just a side business, it really had explosive growth because the demand was so high. Yeah. So I went ahead and shut down my photography business and focused on that business full time.
And then how long did you run that business?
So ran that business for 17 years. It's still operating today, but it's being operated by C-suite leaders. So I'm more, at the board level.
Interesting. So, one of the common threads I'm starting to hear is you've had the wherewithal, the ability, and the vision to know when to pivot and when to either get out or move or take a lateral. That's not an easy thing for people to do. I find that a lot of people will get stuck and go down with the ship sometimes, right? Where do you think that came from for you? Why do you think you had that ability to say, okay, this market has changed, as every market eventually does. I need to shift to something else.
Oh,
you had an ability to let go, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. Yeah. Because I think often what happens to people is we might see that as a failure as opposed to what's next. Where do I go next?
Yes. I only have one answer to that, Henry. And it's the only obvious answer to me is it had to have been God. Like, honestly, I can't come up there. There was nothing in me that could take credit for having the conscious wherewithal to make those choices.
But did you have innate in you, though, is looking at the opportunity. And it's interesting how you phrased it about the photography. You didn't say so much that you were passionate about it, but you had I forget the words that you used. In other words, it seems like you've looked at business as, where is the business opportunity? Certainly, I want to enjoy what I'm doing, but it's about where is that opportunity and shifting and adjusting accordingly to what the market is giving you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that is a part and parcel to the processing of it, even though I think at the time I was not aware.
Yeah.
And that is like, I think always being mindful that I'm here to make money. That's why I work, and to simultaneously do something that I love. Yeah. And both of those have to play together. And I think in hindsight now, to your point, I realized that I always need to be on my toes and always being mindful of what got me here won't get me there ever.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. So then what leads to Clarity Ops? Why did you start Clarity Ops? What was the opportunity that you identified that you addressed with Clarity Ops?
Great question. So building Shoot.Edit, hands down, was the most difficult thing I'd ever done in my life. Very rewarding, but also full of turmoil, battle scars, and failure. On
the people side, the technology side, or both, or
all of it.
Okay.
On the people, on the process, on the performance, on the scale. It really was tumultuous because we were bushwhacking. We were kind of classic Lewis and Clark, going west, and there was no path. Yeah, nobody had done it before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The pioneers often die on the trail, don't they?
True. True. Yeah. Yes. And those guys almost died many times. And so, along the way, fortunately, by God's grace, we made it. But in doing that, having never, also, I had no experience, and so every time we would hit this sort of roadblock or what felt like an insurmountable mountain, I just couldn't find solutions for our bespoke problems. And so my gut reaction was build my own solutions, build my own solutions, build my own solutions. And, by hook or crook, we would break through. And after 15 years of that, what I ended up with is this suite of, frameworks, assessments, systems, tools, techniques that all had been proven and tested to success. And I had an epiphany one day. I was thinking about the AWS story where, Jaski, who was kind of underneath Bezos, went to Jeff and he said, hey, we have built all of these proprietary technologies to build Amazon. But I really think that a ton of businesses worldwide could use our technologies. We should sell it to them. And that was the birth of AWS. And one day it occurred to me, wow, I have same thing. I have all of these tools that I've built, and I really believe that businesses could benefit by using them, but primarily because there's nothing to build. All they have to do is plug them in to their business and they'll be up and running and they'll be able to work. And the thing I was motivated by mostly is these tools don't exist because most businesses don't focus on operational frameworks. They focus on sales and marketing.
And so now to Clarity Ops, you deliver these tools and frameworks through service engagements, or how do you offer it to your clients?
Yeah, so we have a hybrid. It's the hybrid is SaaS and manual consulting, or one-on-one or one-on.
So SaaS for the technologies, the framework tools that they use on a repeated basis, and then consulting or hands to help them implement or apply these tools.
Yeah. Typically, it's either done with them, as we call it, done with you, or for organizations that are just going too fast, we'll go in and just do it for them.
Got it.
Yeah.
And in particular, the couple areas, as I mentioned at the outset, that I wanted to explore, which I think are at a high level here, is it's supporting growth. With growth, especially hyper growth, comes chaos, right? That typically those come hand in hand, or maybe it existed before. At least that's the way I've observed it. But some of the issues with navigating growth, one of the first areas I wanted to explore, because I know you have some deep thoughts on this, is employee retention, developing that team and then keeping them. What have you observed, especially if we apply it to a small business owner, that perhaps you see that we misunderstand as business owners about keeping our best talent?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Henry. Well, I think the first challenge is, at least my experience has been, including me, chief sinner here, if you want to call it, sinner, but or naivety is, what I know now that I did not know then. It is through great people that businesses build great business. Let's be honest, businesses are driven by people. And so to the degree a founder, a business owner, understands and defines what great is, will be the degree to which they get great talent, right? And so, and of course, there's the outliers where they luck out and just stumble upon somebody that's freaking amazing and helps them get their act together. And so I'd say, first thing, seek to define what great means to you and how that permeates into your values. And the reason I think that a next really important step, once you define great in terms of your what great looks like in your people is the next thing that sort of gives rails to those great people is what you value about people and how they will operate, because those values typically determine how leadership will make decisions and how those decisions will convert into process and performance to ultimately achieve the output of the business.
So I'm hearing a couple of things there. One that makes sense to me, obviously, is making sure that I know what our values are for our business and that I've communicated that clearly and that we're in alignment, that we're actually behaving according to those values. But am I also hearing, because I've also found that I've always believed that especially great talent, they want to make sure that they're clear on, to put it crudely, what the rules of the game are here. How are we measured and what it is that we're trying to achieve? Is that part of what you're talking about here, or am I missing it?
No, you're exactly right. I'd say that those components are a little further downriver, but
Okay.
absolutely essential.
Yeah. Okay. All right. At a higher level, then bringing it back to that,
Yeah.
what else have you observed that lets or keeps great people, that keeps them wanting to stay with that particular organization?
Yeah.
What else do
Yeah.
they have to see at a high level?
So if we just say, just people in the business in general, I think there are three key elements. There's compensation, there's growth paths, and then there's laying a foundation for a culture that supports those both.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get into compensation, I think, one of the things I would recommend, if it's within budget, is be mindful of your, the market benchmarks for the different titles you're looking to hire for.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to waste a ton of time trying to find great people that won't even look at your ad because your monetary compensation is out of whack.
Yeah.
So understand the market as it relates to a bespoke role. The other thing are benefits. And I'm not necessarily referring to healthcare and, time off. Of course, these are important, but things like shift flexibility and perhaps a hybrid work from home, work at the office. Perhaps it's a stipend for healthcare, for childcare. There's a whole host of plays you can run when it comes to benefits for people that are really powerful that a lot of business owners, especially in the startup phase, don't think about. So compensation stuff are really important. And then the next one is the growth. I still to this day, even at medium to large size businesses, forget about architecting growth paths for those great people.
Yeah.
Great people are ambitious. They want to grow and they want to earn. Let's be honest. They want to make money.
They want to know where can I go here? What's my next step? How do I keep growing here?
That's right.
But for so many of us as small business owners, we're not thinking that far ahead, right? We need to, but we're so bogged down with let's just get done what we need to get done today. But that's a missing piece. We must invest in defining for these talented people, the great people in our organization, a growth path.
Yep, that's right. And I think perhaps a misunderstanding even for a startup is to think you have to think 10 years down the road. You don't.
No.
You could think 12 to 18 months down the road and still put something in place, because what you do as a leader is you say to them, you demonstrate with your planning, I care about you.
Right.
And I know you probably want to grow, and I'm going to make sure you know that I know that you know.
I've also found it, especially when you're smaller, allowing them to play a role in defining that path is always powerful. What do you think about that?
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. We have a play we use. It's called a Foursquare principle. And the idea is constantly moving people into quadrant one, where their loves, their skills, their passions are supported simultaneously in the role they're hired to do. And if, as a business and at the leadership level, if leaders continue to try their best to keep teammates in quadrant one, happiness and happiness especially goes way up. And then if you supplement that with career paths and learning and development sponsorships, your retention rate really begins to hockey stick in the right direction. And also you have this like vested interest in people to continue to give and lean in and grow with.
This is Henry Lopez, briefly pausing this episode to invite you to schedule a free coaching consultation with me. I welcome the opportunity to chat with you about your business plans and offer the guidance and accountability that we all need to achieve success. As an experienced small business owner myself, I understand the challenges you're experiencing, and often it's about helping you ask the right questions to help you make progress towards achieving your goals. Whether it's getting started with your first business or growing and maybe exiting your existing small business, I can help you get there. To find out more about my business coaching services and to schedule your free coaching consultation, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. Take that next step today towards finally realizing your business ownership dreams. I look forward to speaking with you soon. So that's interesting. I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, it might be similar to what others might express, being in the right seat on the bus kind of thing. It's interesting, though, to explore that just another moment further, Garrett. Are you saying that you have found that if I continuously keep people in an uncomfortable state, either because, we have so much growth going on, I got to move you here, I got to move you there, I got to give you these other responsibilities, that might be good in the short term, but long term, that's disruptive. Is that making sense? Am I making sense there?
So thank you for clarifying, Henry. I'm actually saying the contrary.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is, what a lot of us business owners tend to do is we go right butts in right seats, meaning we pay attention to skills only, and then we ignore passions and happiness, and we also ignore other strengths that might be living in there that we did not explore during the interview process. So the quadrant one is the collective. It is not only being great in the current seat that you're in, but constantly on behalf of the teammate evaluating, are your strengths, your true strengths, and your entire suite of skills best suited in the role that you're currently in, and being mindful of that. Whether that's quarterly, once a year, twice a year, whatever, being mindful of that. Okay. And then when you have that mindset and it's connected to a defined career path, meaning the next opportunity for you is right there because of this alignment, that's what I'm suggesting. And then one other thing I want to comment on is your thought regarding moving people around or putting things on them because the business needs it. And I think this is a catastrophic mistake that businesses make regarding people.
It's a huge mistake that we make in growth, or what you refer to as sustainable growth, because, and let me just, sorry to interrupt, but I think the reason we do it is we're going about growth the wrong way, right? And we have limited budgets. And so we figure, well, let's keep growing, but I'll just throw more on my employees, give them more responsibility, right?
That's right.
And that's catastrophic because...
Yeah, well, that's catastrophic because typically it's reactive, not proactive, meaning it's not planned for. It's in a frantic, desperate mode. Number one. Number two, it's not load balanced. So what leaders end up doing is dumping or overloading on these people.
Yeah.
Rather than strategically load balancing. And when you overload people and you didn't plan for it, typically you ask them and expect them to do things they're not trained in, they're not good at, or not skilled in, natively or otherwise. And it all becomes this, downward spiral of destruction.
Yeah, no, I see it. And it's funny when you're mentioning this, I'm picturing a particular organization that I'm familiar with. It's the, classic high growth, but they're trying to do more and more with the same number of people. And the culture has become, just do more, just do more. And so what has happened is the boundaries have blurred, right? Even
Yeah.
though they pretend to take care of their people, and I think they honestly want to, they're not exhibiting that because they're
Yeah.
expecting their people to work ridiculous hours, to work even during their planned time off, no boundaries whatsoever, and that's what ends up happening, and that's not sustainable in my observation.
I mean, listen, I'm with you 100%. I mean, the stats support this behavior. 9 in 10 businesses fail. And you and I both know there, and many of us out there, we know there are a ton of reasons why 90+% of businesses fail. And that is, cascading across, from 1 year to 10 years. But I think it is mostly due to everything you just mentioned. It's reactive leadership approach that's not based on, prudent planning and architecting good rails and frameworks for people, process, and performance. But instead, we get into this reactive mode in business, which tends to be standard. And anytime you're trying to drive business, in the rearview mirror, you're gonna put people through hell.
Yeah. Okay. So then from a small business owner's perspective, usually the way I see it, I've got several constraints to growth. One is, lack of capital that I might need to facilitate this growth, to fund this growth.
Sure.
Obviously, we're going to assume the market is there, right? That there's a market for me to address that allows me to expand and grow. But
Yep.
it could be that I don't have the money, but usually is that I don't have the people. But again, that comes in the challenge of, when do I invest in more people so we don't end up in the scenario that we just described? And
Yep.
so, where's the balance there? Is this what you refer to as sustainable growth, or is that related to this?
So in part, I mean, sustainable growth always has constraints, and depending on where a business is in their ARR, and or in their growth life cycle, will determine what rails or infrastructure are needed for that state. But maybe we'll talk about the avatar, 100 grand to 1 million in revenue per year.
Yep.
A lot of times at that stage, you have, business owners, owner operators that are wearing a ton of hats,
Mm-hmm.
more than they should. And they haven't, are still struggling to, or haven't learned how to either delegate or say no. And so I think, for that stage, looking to grow into, multi-million in revenue, or, a $5 million a year revenue position, I think the best thing they can be doing is saying no to the things that matter least.
Okay.
You know,
So
I think,
focusing on what you do best and well, and that has to be part of your path to growth.
yeah, that's right. And I would supplement that with focusing on what either your advisors or you believe are the most valuable things to do for the business to achieve its goals, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And then, as the business owner, figuring out what are the essential, most important things that only you can do and should do, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
side note, when I was growing businesses, I realized quickly I should not, I should delegate finance to other people, because that's not my sweet spot. I'm a
Mhm.
scale guy, I'm a process guy, I'm a culture guy. And so that's where I was going to bring the most value. But for a while, I didn't know that. And I thought I was supposed to do finances because I was the founder. And I caused a lot of harm, right? So
Yeah.
back to your point, focus, yes, but primary focus is, what does the business need to achieve its goals, and then align the skills accordingly.
Understood. Okay. All right. Let's touch on the chaos. I have a lot of thoughts on the chaos that occurs in smaller organizations.
Yeah.
In fact, I recently did an episode on this because what I have found, curious to your thoughts, is that often we, meaning the founders, the business owner, for all kinds of different reasons, can be the source of the chaos.
Yes.
And in part, it's because we grow up as business owners being the firefighter in chief. We're the problem solver. And we get up in the morning looking for what is it that I got to solve today, right? And it's almost like if I don't have those problems to solve, then what is my value? And there are other ways in which we manifest it. You touched on, not delegating effectively. So creating an environment that has to come through me. But what are your thoughts? What are your observations as to what, in smaller organizations in particular, what feeds or fuels the chaos?
Yeah, I think the things that fuel chaos are disorganization and bad planning. It is not having rails for the roller coaster, not having rules, instructions, and guidelines that are load balanced across the org or the business, and then evenly distributed so that there are controls within each function to move forward. And so like here's I think here is the root of it. Out of the gate, most business owners don't go, okay, what are my job descriptions for every single role?
Right.
And how do those job descriptions cascade into collectively achieving the business goal? Most business owners don't think about that. I sure didn't. I know now how vital that is if you want to avoid chaos and you also want to scale fast. So I'd say it's just, that's the root of it, Henry.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. As you were saying that, that was exactly what I was thinking. And I find that, I would say 9 out of 10 small businesses that have that chaos, there's a lack of definition of who's supposed to do what. Part of it, I think, is fueled by the owner or owners or key employees wanting to have control over everything. So nobody's empowered.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that lack of clarity as to who's responsible for what.
Yeah, that's right. What's the old adage? If you don't know where you're going, you won't know when you get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if if we're a team, hockey, baseball, football, rugby, whatever, and you as a coach, you're not clear on your plays and you're not able to articulate to each of the players how they will participate in each play, you're not going to win. You're not going to win.
All of these things also, of course, then determine what your culture is going to be, either undermines or fosters a strong culture. Last question I have for you, though, on culture. We could talk about it for hours, but
I know, right? Probably days, right?
Exactly. But as the owner, as the CEO of a small business, what do you think is one of the principal responsibilities that I have for the culture of my business? Like, what does that look like? What is my role as the CEO? And let's say it's a fairly run organization. People know their roles. I've empowered my team, right? I'm somewhat separated from the day to day. But now as the leader, what is my role in culture?
Jeff Weiner, the ex-CEO at LinkedIn, he said something that I'll never forget, and that was his primary role is to be the chief reminder officer. And that is regarding culture, which permeates into operations. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say, I think that's it. We're assuming that the founder has defined roles, responsibilities across functions within the org. All of that's clear. And let's assume they also have defined values that govern decision-making and behaviors. And let's also assume that accountability is being upheld by all of the leaders that drive change. Then I'd say that CEO's job or that founder's job is to remind everybody all the time, constantly, about those things and about where they're going.
Here's where we're going. Here's how we do it. Here's how we behave here. And then I got to imagine also I have a responsibility for measuring that, for listening to make sure that we are performing at that level.
Without a doubt, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. Totally with you. Critical.
Okay.
And I think also a founder should not be afraid to correct. Part of accountability is being able to part of accountability is, number one, acknowledging the wins in their leaders and their people, fanning them to flames when they do great stuff, doing that public. Like, I think that's really important. But just as important, like any good parent would do, is being steadfast about correcting and calling out stuff that is done incorrectly or done in a way that's harmful.
Yeah.
And making sure that the team also is reminded, hey, that kind of thing we just can't do, won't do, because it's too destructive. And so there's balancing both of those, I think, is critical to the reminder part.
Agreed. Excellent. All right. Obviously, I explained it at the beginning, and we've touched on it. But give me the summary again of what Clarity Ops does. And one way I always like to hear it is tell me also who's an ideal client for you. What type of challenges do they have that you guys help with very specifically?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Henry. So Clarity Ops is designed to help small and medium-sized businesses mindfully design their workplace for maximized, people, process, and performance. And it takes this suite of what we call fast operational tools and makes them available immediately to implement without having to slow down or stop and have to figure it out on your own, which most businesses can't. So that's kind of our differentiator and our value prop. And then, forgive me, Henry, what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, and then obviously you've kind of defined it already, but what an ideal client comes to you looking like what? What do they already have in place, or they're maybe missing, that then they would get the most out of what you offer?
So generally, businesses that come to us are in one of two stages. They obviously have product market fit, and they've experienced some good growth. They're happy with their growth, but they've stagnated, and they had at one time operational infrastructure, but they outgrew it, and it's no longer relevant, and things have broken, and they can't break through.
I see.
So that's where we will come in and help them restructure for sustainable gain.
To get to scale that business to that next level for them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And like I said, generally, businesses don't have time to slow down. And so our goal is to help them do this in a fast and meaningful way that sustains. The other avatar is businesses that they got it going, they hit their revenue thresholds, but they never, ever invested in governance, in infrastructure, in rules and guidelines. And so they're a mess.
And that's got to be, I got to think, Garrett, pretty common, right? Because it seems to me like it's more common to say growth at all costs.
Yep.
And then we'll clean it up.
Yep. That is the main play. I'm with you, Henry.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. I'm always looking for a book recommendation. Is there a book that comes to mind that you've read recently or in the past that you would recommend?
Yeah. Great book called The $1 Trillion Coach with Bill Campbell. He's, he was the go-to guy for the big, for the Googles, the Apples of the world. And he's just got some really wonderful insights in that book. And it was, by the way, written by Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO of over at Google. I think my biggest takeaway from that book, and there were many, but my biggest takeaway was, in his very stout opinion, you cannot be a great leader without first being a great manager, because it is the manager who upholds this acronym I call PI. They're professional, they have integrity, and they have EQ, and they prove their worth through their ability to manage people, which earns the respect of those people. And it is only when you earn the respect of the people that you lead that they will follow you, which makes you a leader.
It's interesting. So as a business owner, obviously, I'm already typically in place when people come in. If people join the organization as I'm growing, and by then I'm CEO, I've got people in place. How do I make that happen? And how do they see me? How do I earn my stripes as a manager then in that scenario?
Yeah, it's great. So I think if a business is hiring, let's say a leader, I guess we're all leaders in one aspect, but if the business needs a managing leader to come in, and they need them to already have strong management capability, then I would highly recommend that business vet and test their management capabilities, find out what they value, find out how they manage, see if they can do some, third-party interviews, especially if it's a high-level leader, to vet and prove before they join the force.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that book recommendation. I have not read that, but put it on the list. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Awesome. You bet, Harry. Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap it up here, Garrett. Last question I always ask is which one thing you want us to take away, in particular, as I, was framing this conversation for a small business owner that wants to grow and minimize the chaos. What would be one thing you'd want us to take away from the conversation?
I would say, I think that the status quo in business is that chaos is just something you have to live with. You have to live in reactive mode. You have to, fighting fires is just standard. And I would encourage anybody listening that has bought that lie. I think it's a big fat lie. And there is a better way, a mindful way to build business with proper thinking and proper structure. And then with that, I would say, if you're confused about it, don't feel like you have to do it alone. Go find advice. Go find somebody that can help you think through these things. It will probably be one of the best investments you ever make for yourself, for your people, and for your business.
Yeah. Well said. And that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I was trying to express earlier when I said that we're the source of the chaos.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was getting at, is that I think we sometimes come to that particular point in our business growth thinking that's the only way it can work. That's the only way it can happen. Yeah. Excellent. Where do you want us to go online to learn more about Clarity Ops?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. My handle is Garrett Delph. And then, of course, there's our site, clarityops.co.
Got it. And again, it's Garrett with 2 R's, 2 T's, and Delph is DELPH.
Yeah, that's right, Henry. Yeah, thank you.
All right, wonderful conversation, Garrett. Thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time to be with me today.
Yeah, I sure appreciate it. It was really great to be here, Henry. Thank you.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining us on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today, again, is Garrett Delph. I release new episodes every Monday morning. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and at my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.